All right. So today, look, we are going to talk about some really big problems that we're all facing in the leadership space at the moment, and how coaching and coaching skills might be able to help. Okay, we've got an hour together. I'm going to do my best to give you as much value as I can in that time. And at the end of it, I'm going to, offer or show you guys where you might be able to get some help if you are interested in that. All right, is that okay? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if that is okay. And if you stick around, I've also got a very special surprise for you guys as well. Something that no one in a public forum has seen. And there's also a resource that is going to help you to apply some of the content from today's webinar. All right, if you stick right to the end. All right, cool. Let's jump into it. So, okay, the world we're in today. Just letting my slides catch up. My argument is that leaders aren't equipped to lead in the way that they need to in today's world. Okay, and I want to start this just with an analogy to help frame where we're going. Okay, I've got a grandfather, 2 uncles, 3 cousins, and a brother who are all pilots. And while I myself am not a pilot, I've got a 16-year career in the Air Force. Aviation, you might say, is in my family's blood. My brother is a first officer with Qantas. Okay, he is a co-pilot in the for Qantas Airlines, right? And I was talking to him around the role of a captain in an aircraft. And the captain has this primary responsibility of being accountable for getting the aircraft and the passengers safely from A to B. All right, and I was talking to him about that. The co-pilot's role, the first officer, their role is to support the captain in that responsibility. Now, as I was talking to my brother, I was talking about what separates just an average captain, okay, from a great captain. And the average captain, they perform their first and primary responsibility well. Okay, they get passengers and aircraft safely from A to B. But a great captain is one that actually develops the first officer in that process. Right, they still get passengers and aircraft safely from A to B, but they do it in a way that actually develops the first officer, the co-pilot, that allows them to do a lot of the flying, discusses the decision making, gets a lot of their input. And really what the captain is doing is developing the experience and the expertise of the first officer, so that that first officer can be a future captain. So this role of the leader then is to develop the captain's capability within that first officer and within the airline itself. All right, and I would say that that is a core role and function of leadership, is developing capability both within individuals and within organizations. And I'll my thought, and I'll put it to you guys, is that leaders aren't equipped to develop capability in today's world. All right, so let's unpack that a little bit. Right, let's look at today's world. It is so fast-paced. It is changing. It is dynamic. We've all probably heard that term VUCA: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. It describes the world that we are facing today. Technology is advancing at an ever-increasing rate. Things are getting faster and faster. We're getting pulled in different directions all the time. And for organizations to be successful in today's environment, what that means is that they have to be agile. They have to be innovative. They need to do things differently, adapt to change. All right. And really, it's the role of leaders to develop a capability that is adaptable. Right. The capability to adapt. Right. To be innovative, and to develop that capability within the people. There's a great quote that's floating around social media at the moment. You might have seen, it's by Alan Toffler, and it says, "The illiterate of the future are not those that can't read or write, but those that will not be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn." And really, in my my mind, for organizations to be successful, they need to have the capability to learn the new things that are coming through, to unlearn the old ways of doing things and relearn more effective ways of doing things in the new and advancing the dynamic environment that we find ourselves in. And I would say that, you know, the majority of leaders that I work with and that I come across don't have the capability, or they're not equipped to develop capability within their staff and within their companies. The other part is the workforce of today, right? It is changing significantly. You know, there's a big proportion of millennials, and we know the research tells us that they want 50% more feedback and development, right? PwC in their latest Millennials at Work report, they've said that personal development is one of the primary benefits that millennials are looking for when they choose a workplace or from a workplace. Okay, it's more important to them than work-life flexibility. It's more important than cash bonuses. They expect their leaders to be able to invest and develop them as people. All right, but here's the thing: the staff are expecting more development from their leaders, but Gartner, in their research, they're indicating that 45% of leaders don't feel confident in their ability to develop their workforce in the way that they need to. Okay, so I want to throw that to you guys. Is that you know, if you were to rate your ability to develop others on a scale of 1 to 10, where would it be? Throw your rating in the chat. Okay, so while our staff are wanting more development, all right, our organizations are expecting leaders to develop people more as well. Okay, 70% of HR executives are actually suggesting that, or they believe that their leaders within their company need to invest more time into developing people. So as leaders, we're finding ourselves kind of stuck in the middle, right? Our staff are wanting more development. Our organizations are wanting us to develop more, but we're just not confident in our ability to do so. And so here's the thing, right? Staff, okay, if their development needs aren't met, they're going to go somewhere where they are. All right, McKinsey's talking about in their latest research, 40% of staff are willing to leave within the next 3 to 6 months if they get the opportunity. All right, it's kind of this great resignation thing that everybody's talking about. I love the way that you know, PricewaterhouseCoopers put it in their report. They say loyalty is light. All right, you know, really, it's very much around, hey, what are my needs and my expectations? And it's, you know, if you're not going to meet those, then I'm going to find somewhere that will. Okay, and it's never been easier for staff to do that. It's never been easier for them to change jobs. And so we get this kind of war on talent idea. All right. And the third point that I'll make is that traditional leadership, right, doesn't equip leaders to lead today. Okay, I want you to think about, when was the first time you got your first leadership training at work? Okay, was it before or after you got supervisory responsibilities? All right, put that in the chat. Okay, leadership development traditionally comes too late. Okay, there's research out there that says across industry, on average, it's 10 years between when someone first gets their first supervisory responsibilities and when they get their first lot of quality leadership training. That's a decade of trying to figure things out, not knowing what you're doing or whether you're doing the right thing. Okay, it's kind of like, if we go back to the pilot analogy, right, handing the controls of an aircraft over to a pilot who doesn't know how to fly. It's crazy, and you know, we would, if that ever happened, we would say that that's complete and utter negligence. But that's what we do in leadership all the time. All right. You know, just looking at some of the things that you guys are putting in, there's after. Sarah, you got leadership training before you got supervisory responsibilities. That is awesome to hear. It's pretty rare in today's world. Okay, you know, traditional leadership training, it's funded from the top. There's $10 spent at the executive level leadership development for every $1 spent at the frontline level. Okay, and the other thing about traditional leadership is it's geared towards developing the individual skills of the leader, helping the leader perform better, right? And so if you think about what that leadership training might be, it might be crucial conversations training. So it's teaching leaders and helping them get better at having crucial conversations, okay? Or it might be emotional intelligence training, or helping them be more aware of themselves and emotions in others and managing their own behavior, all right? These things are absolutely critical for leaders, but we're not actually equipping leaders to develop others. We're not equipping them to develop capability, okay? And the final point I'll make around traditional leadership development is that it requires time away from work. It's going away and sitting in a workshop for a day, or it's going on a 2-week course, and you're taking people offline in order to complete the training. And that becomes really expensive. You're not only paying for the development, but you also have the opportunity costs when taking people offline to do that, okay? So as a result, right, we get leaders that are making comments like this: we need to find and keep good talent, all right? We're struggling, all right, in this war of talent, finding and keeping the good people, all right? Where we get leaders that are saying, hey, we're growing beyond the skills of our managers. Okay, things are happening so fast that the growth of the business is faster than the growth of the capability within our leaders. Okay, we have to do more with less. All right, there's expectation for more development, but the funding's not necessarily there. All right, so leaders, again, they've got pressure for development from both above and below, but they're not necessarily funded to do anything with it. And we wish our teams would be more proactive. Okay. And we want them to kind of solve their own problems and be on the front step and not just be reactive all the time. And the reality is that, our teams keep expecting us to solve their problems for them, and therefore we become reactive all the time. Okay. And so in amongst all of that, we kind of ask, what's going on? All right. What is really going on? And it starts by really, traditionally we are telling people what to do, all right? And that's kind of intuitive. Well, right from when we're kids, we think, okay, when we're the boss, when we're the leader, we tell our people, our friends what to do. We're just role modeling, I guess, what our parents are doing, and they continually tell us what to do. And, traditionally in the corporate world as well, leadership is, the executives are telling the people on the ground what to do. And that's kind of all well and good. So, but it causes a few problems, right? If you think about when your team have a problem, okay, and they bring that problem to you, well, what do? What do you think the majority of people do? Okay, the majority of leaders that I work with, well, they tell their team the answer. All right, they tell their team the solution to the problem. And why do they do that? Well, it's quick. Okay, it's easy, right? And you get your way, right? You get your solution implemented your way. But here's the thing, right? Let's say that you tell your team the solution and they go away and they implement it and it works. It's great, all right? They think, cool, awesome solution. Boss gave me that solution. He's amazing. What happens next time they have a problem? Well, they're going to go back to the source of their last solution, which is you. And therefore, you become this bottleneck, all right, within the organization. Your team, every time they encounter a problem, they're coming to you to solve it, okay? They've become reliant on you to solve problems. And, when we start looking at broader performance of the team's completely looking at you, and they're reliant on you to provide the direction, to solve the problems, to come up with the answers and tell them what to do in order to perform. So our team's performance is centered purely around the team leader. And that puts a whole lot of pressure on the leader, right? So they're now expected to have all the answers, which is increasingly hard when we're in this VUCA environment where things are changing all the time. So the leader then has to, stay up to date with everything, on top of solving everybody's problems, on top of doing the strategic work that the executives and the board want, all right, and then doing their own work that they've got to do. And there's just not enough time in the day. Okay, and then we're supposed to develop people on top of that, right? It's all a bit crazy. So what we really need to do is we need to make that shift from telling people what to do to asking people what they should do, right? So when we tell people what to do, they're kind of passive, right? They're not engaged, they're not thinking. But when we ask them a question, what happens is they have to think about the answer. And so therefore we engage their brain, right? And they become active participants in the problem solving process, all right? Or the strategic planning or the decision-making process, whatever it is we're doing, when we ask questions, we're actually involving our people. And the whole point there is, right, we're developing their problem-solving muscles. We're developing their decision-making muscles. We're developing their thinking muscles. And when they're doing all those things, they can be proactive, okay? And that relieves a whole lot of pressure, right? Because when people come up with their own solutions, we ask them questions and they come up with their own solutions, they go away and they implement that and it's successful, they're like, hey, that was my solution, right? Their self-efficacy, their confidence in their ability to solve their own problems increases, okay? And so therefore, when they encounter a new problem, they go back to the source of their last solution, which in this case is them, right? So they then sit down and start solving their own problems, okay? And that relieves a whole lot of pressure on leaders. Leaders don't have to know the answer then, okay? They don't have to solve all the problems. They don't have to be the one that makes all the decisions, all right? And it's so much better. You know, I tell this story. I was running some coaching skills training back in the Air Force for the Air Force Leadership Coaching Program, and there was a couple of sergeants or managers that were they had this problem where all their junior workforce had a very junior workforce. They were coming to them and they were saying, what's this answer? What's this answer? What's this problem? How do I solve it? And the sergeants spent their entire time fighting fires, right? They couldn't do their work, all right, because they spent their whole time answering the questions of their staff. And as a result, they were either staying back really late or taking work home, and it was kind of burning them out. They sat in the training I was running, and then they came out and they said, hey, let's start applying this. It worked really well for them because they were both working together. So split shifts, they covered the entire workforce in that workshop. And so every time these junior technicians would come to them and ask them questions, then they wouldn't tell them the answer. They'd ask them questions, all right, and get them to come up with the answers. And after a couple of weeks, the techos come on, Sarge, what's going on? You never tell us the answers anymore. All you ask these bloody questions. And the sergeants basically said, well, hey, this is what we're doing, right? We're taking this coaching approach. We want to develop you guys. We want to get you guys thinking for yourselves. This is the process we're taking you through. And within 6 weeks of that, the whole culture of the workshop had totally changed. The morale was through the roof, okay? The performance metrics had gone up. And you know what the biggest benefit for the two sergeants were? They now had time to do their work during the day, all right? And they didn't have to stay late or take work home. And so, you know, increased performance, increased development of staff, all by asking questions. You can see really that's what coaching is. If you look at the diagram on the slide there, you can see that directing, okay, or telling people is our traditional approach. And it's where the amount of the solution that comes from you as the leader is really high. But on the other side, when we ask questions, we're facilitating learning, right? And we're getting the people that we're coaching or the people that we're asking questions to come up with solutions. And that's very empowering for them. And that's what we want. You know, coaching really is unlocking a person's potential to maximize his or her own performance. It's helping them learn rather than teaching them. Okay, and that's a quote by Sir John Whitmore. The whole aim here is, right, if we ask people enough questions, they begin to ask those questions themselves. If we coach them enough times, they begin to coach themselves. It is that whole analogy around give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, or it's versus teaching a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. All right, and I see, Glenn, you've put that in the chat. You kind of read my mind of where that was going. Okay, Really what we're trying to get is people develop the capability within our team and our staff to find their own answers, to solve their own problems, okay? And that capability there, all right, essentially we're teaching people how to learn, unlearn, and relearn, as Ellen Toffler would say, all right? It's developing their own skills and abilities to develop their own capabilities, all right? And once they've done it for themselves, hey, then they can do it for other people, all right? So really what coaching is around, it's essentially asking strategic questions to help facilitate both the learning process and the problem solving process in other people, okay? And so there's this great quote that I love, okay? And by Harvard Business Review, all right? Essentially what it's saying, the 21st century managers simply can't have all the answers, right? To cope in that new reality, companies are moving from traditional command and control practices towards something very different, okay? The role of a manager, in short, is becoming that of a coach. Okay, and it's not just Harvard Business Review that's saying that. You know, there's a whole stack of people that are getting more and more involved in coaching. All right, I'm looking at a study here that was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, in between what have we got, 2015 and 2019. There was an increase in 46% of the number of leaders who are using coaching skills in the workplace. Okay, they're using coaching skills in order to do their job, to lead their people. And so that's happening more and more. If you want to remain competitive, right, out in your industry and within your organization, you kind of need to do that, right? The more and more people are doing it, there's an expectation now for leaders that they have coaching skills, that have the ability to coach. Less and less are we getting external coaches in. We're relying more on our internal leaders to coach and do the development. All right. Now, you know, this same study is looking at 22,000 people over 161 countries, and just some of the benefits that are found for leaders who are using coaching skills. Right. Improved workforce performance, 70% result there. Okay. Improved business management, 61%. Okay, 51% of people improve team effectiveness and cohesion. All right, 57% of leaders who use coaching skills, they have improved time management, improved communication skills, improved self-confidence, improved work-life balance, improved relationships in the workplace. Okay, I want you to think about which one of those benefits would be most beneficial to you or most valuable to you in your workplace right now. Throw that in the chat, okay? And you know, as they did that, I guess the kind of the high level takeaway from that study was that the return on investment for coaching in their organization was 86%, okay? And so when it comes to ROI, that's pretty high. All right, coaching, investment in coaching is really important. So this is where we start looking at the coaching leader, right? And that the coaching leader is really, it's a leader who uses coaching skills in the workplace to lead. All right. What's important to understand that when we start talking about a coaching leader, we're not talking about creating leaders who are executive coaches. Okay. We actually wouldn't want that in our organizations. If we just had everybody who's an executive coach and put them in leadership positions and you know, have them running our organizations, stuff wouldn't get done. Okay. Deadlines wouldn't get met. The sole focus would be on developing people. And that's not kind of realistic, right? We need to drive performance, and developing people is an important part of a leadership role, but it's not the only part of a leadership role. And so when we start talking about coaching and coaching skills, we need to keep in context that it's one aspect of someone's overall leadership capability. But here's the thing, right? Your coaching skills and your ability to coach will enhance the way you carry out every other task that's kind of incorporated in that leadership capability. All right. The way that you do everything is improved by using coaching skills. And I'll talk a little bit about that and give you a few examples in a minute. But when we start talking about the coaching leader and what makes up a coaching leader, okay, and we've got three main components up there in this model, okay. We've got the mindset, we've got the skill set, and we've got the leader's practice, okay. So when we look at that, right, in order for a leader to coach well, all right, or to use coaching skills effectively, they need to have the right mindset. And it's really around, it starts with this kind of fixed versus growth mindset. A fixed mindset, okay, is really around, this is the way it is. When it comes to people and developing people, it's kind of like this understanding that this is the way people are. And no matter how much I invest, I can't make them better or not. All right. That's kind of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset that says, hey, people can improve. All right. And I can invest time and energy into people and they will grow. All right. And they will develop. I can invest time and energy into myself and I will grow and I will develop. Right. That's kind of that whole mindset there. And there's a couple of core beliefs that really enable a leader to coach and coach well. Okay. And the first is that people matter. Right. It's an understanding that, yes, performance is really important in an organizational space, but ultimately it's people who perform. It's people who drive performance. It's the capability of the people that is what is going to drive the performance of the organization over the long term. Okay, yes, you can do a whole lot of things over the short term and cut people, and that's going to boost the performance numbers in the short term, but it's not going to be sustainable performance, right? You've got to develop people, you've got to invest in people. There's this other core belief around people have the ability to solve their own problems if they get a little bit of help, if they are able to unlock from the problem, okay, and actually view things from a different perspective, okay? If they become aware of what resources and options and opportunities are available to them. So often we get locked onto a particular problem, right? An old mentor of mine used to say that people are more brilliant than they realize. Sometimes they just need a little bit of help to realize it. And I'm a big believer of that, and I'll use that kind of saying in that mantra quite often. And it's the role of a leader to help them realize how brilliant they are, how much potential they have, okay, that they do have the ability to solve problems. And there's this other belief around it's better to empower rather than control, all right? It's really empower our teams, okay, rather than control them. And if you believe with that, if you agree with me on that one, all right, put a yes, I agree in the chat, or some other emoji, something like that. Okay. When it comes to mindset, there's Chad Hall is another coach who wrote a book called The Coaching Mindset. He said, if the coach thinks that the client needs the coach's help to heroically swoop in and save the day, then he's preventing the coach from growing, from changing, and from saving his own day. All right. And that's the same with leaders, right? If the leader thinks that they have to save the day for their team all the time, then he's preventing the team from saving their own day, right? And so that's a kind of a mindset piece, right? Then we talk to the skill set. These are all the skills, the techniques, the tools that a leader might have in order to use to coach, right? And so these are things like rapport building skills, relationship building skills, skills to build trust. Okay, trust is ultimately the foundation of influence, and influence is what essentially leadership is. So if you can build trust, all right, then you want your people to say, I trust you enough to influence me. Okay, that's kind of the core of influence, right? And core of leadership. We've got another skill is listening. All right. Many of us take listening for granted, but it's a skill that we don't do well. Okay, and it makes people feel valued. It's really crucial in terms of hitting people, crucial in terms of hitting people. Not what I was going to say. Crucial in terms of making people feel valued. All right, and building up that self-belief and confidence. Okay, we've got the mechanics of coaching, which is asking good questions. That's another part of the skill set, right? What makes an effective question? What are the right times to use certain questions? What are really strategic questions to ask? And then we've got also the models and the frameworks, okay, that we use in order to, coach people, to facilitate change, and all of that, right? And then we've got the leadership practice of the leader. Okay, and so this is really the leader going about and doing leadership. Okay, but it's essentially in their day-to-day leadership that we find the opportunities to coach, the opportunities to find or to use the skills that we have in that skill set aspect, right? And so, when we have the mindset and we go about our leadership day to day, that's where we find the opportunities in order to coach and develop people, right? And then it's the mindset and the skill set. Really, that's around our own personal development and developing ourselves and our own ability, right? It's the self-coaching piece for us as leaders. We want our teams to self-coach, but we need to self-coach as well. And when we've got the skill set and the practice, the day-to-day leadership, that's where we're continually developing our skills, all right? And that's where we get this sense of mastery. So, once we start talking about things, what are the opportunities? Okay, what are the day-to-day things that we can do in order to practice coaching? All right, a lot of people will think it's the one-on-one conversations that we have with our staff, the one-on-one meetings, right? And yes, we can do that. But remember, we don't want executive coaches as leaders. We want coaches who use coaching skills. Leaders who use coaching skills. And so, yes, there's the opportunity in the one-on-one. But if you think about training, if you think about feedback, delegating, strategic planning, decision-making, performance management, casting vision, implementing change, all those things and pretty much everything that you do as a leader can be enhanced by using coaching skills, by asking strategic questions, by creating a level of engagement in the people that we lead as we do those tasks. All right. So I just want to share with you two examples of what that looks like. Okay. And so the first example, all right, it comes from my time as a military weapons instructor, okay? And this is around instruction and training, and particularly weapons instruction. So for anyone, I know there's a couple online that have actually been in the military, got that experience, and know what weapons training is like. There is a very narrow left and right of arc, okay? You can't just figure out how to do it yourself. It is, traditionally we're trained like this, do that. And so what we would have is staff at RAF Base Amberley will come through while I was at the armory there, and every 12 months they'd have to do revision training on their weapons and pass a weapons handling test. And so what we would do, they'd come through and we'd provide all their revision training and then give them their assessment. And what that would look like was, all right, weapon fires, weapon stops, tilt, cock, lock, look in. You look in the chamber, you see a round in the chamber. You take the weapon, take the magazine off, give the weapon a shake, look back in the chamber, see that the chamber is clear, put the magazine back on, realign, continue firing. Right? That's the way that we were trained to provide that revision. And it's very much telling and directing people what to do. And what people were doing, though, was that they weren't thinking about it. They were just responding to the commands that were given. And and the result of that, right, once they passed their weapon handling test, they walked out the door and auto-dumped everything that they'd just done for the past 2 hours, okay? Which meant when they came back 12 months' time, we had to start again from scratch. Once I'd done my coaching training, what I decided was, hey, let's take some coaching skills and insert questions into the way that I instruct and train, okay? So this is the directing piece, all right? Very much so, but I'm asking questions as I direct. Okay, and so that training ended up looking like this: weapon fires, weapon stops, what do you do? And I get them to respond and tell me okay, go ahead and do that. All right, okay, as you tilt, cock, lock, and you look in the chamber, what do you see? and get them to tell me, okay, and then what do you do? All right, carry out that. All right. And so I was asking a whole lot of questions in the way that we went through that revision, and I was engaging their brain. All right. The result was that they got to their weapons handling test more quickly. And the other benefit was that when they came back in 12 months' time, they actually remembered more. All right. They hadn't auto dumped everything. It had actually encoded in their brain a whole lot more. They remembered that and were more effective in that. Okay, so there's an example of how coaching skills have enhanced the way that I personally instructed and trained and directed, okay, in the workplace. The next example, right, is delivering feedback. Okay, so I spent a bit of time working with leaders and teams and kind of teaching them how to effectively deliver feedback. All right, and you know, traditionally people with feedback, they're like, hey, you did this wrong, this is what you need to do right. Again, it's really that telling aspect. I talk to people around explain the why, discuss the impact of whatever it is you're delivering feedback around. If it's a behavior, if it's talking over somebody in the meeting, right, discuss the impact of that behavior. Okay, and that is a perfect place to actually insert questions and get people to think about what the impact is rather than you just telling them. Okay, you know, I go through this training and it's like, hey, you know, you're consistently speaking over Dave in the meeting. What do you think the impact of that for him personally might be? Right, and it gets them to stop, right, and think. Okay, and then you might go, hey, what do you think the impact on the rest of the team might be? Okay, and get them to think about that. And what you're doing then is you're getting them to self-assess, become more self-aware, right? You're engaging them in that process, but you're also developing qualities like empathy, right? Which is really important in leaders because you're getting them to put in other, getting them to put themselves in other people's shoes. So, you know, and the number of leaders that I've had that come back to me afterwards and say, hey, that was one of the most important kind of pieces of the training that we did. You know, I have been delivering feedback that way and it has really landed. I've tried to get a whole bunch of change with this particular individual over the last couple of years and got nothing. You know, 2 conversations using those techniques, asking those questions, has totally shifted that particular individual, right? And so again, you can see there that delivering feedback is just another specific part of a leader's role, but you're using coaching skills to enhance that, right? Doing strategic planning, same thing, right? Ask questions of people to involve them and get them engaged. You know, if you're implementing change, ask questions around what do you think the change might be, what might be the impacts of that. And all of that, right? Ask questions and use coaching skills, and you become so much more effective in so many areas, all right? And so ultimately, you know, there's a bit of a journey that leaders go on as they begin to learn how to use coaching skills, right? They're at the lowest level when they don't know what coaching is and they haven't had leadership training, they're often lost, right? And first they need to become aware of what they don't know. They need to become aware of what coaching is. But at that level, leaders so often, all right, are doing more harm than good because they're perpetuating poor leadership, right? They're looking at poor leadership role models and just doing what they've seen, and that's really damaging over the long term, right? So they're training the next generation of leaders who are under them, you know, unwittingly in poor leadership, and so we need to kind of nip that in the bud, right? Once people start being coached and they get the experience of being coached, they know what coaching is, right? And they begin to practice effective leadership. They begin to practice, all right, coachings and coaching skills and all the things that the development activities that come out of coaching, right? And then leaders step into that that space of where they begin to coach others, all right? Their performance themselves has improved, and that's when they are aware of what coaching skills are. They begin to coach others, and their focus then is on developing their coaching skill set. Okay, what are the coaching skills that we can use to enhance the way we lead? Okay, level 4 is when leaders start to coach others to coach. All right, and this is where we're starting to embed coaching, right, and developing capability into the culture of our organization. Okay, and you can see at each level, right, the value and the performance starts to go up. And then at that high level, we've got inspiring coaching cultures, right? And it's that concept there of Kaizen. Now, for the majority of people, when they see Kaizen, they think continuous improvement. That's true. That's core to what Kaizen is. But if you pull it apart and unpack the concept, it's also very much around influence beyond boundaries. Okay, so at this level, we've got someone who's coaching, and they might be coaching people and inspiring coaching outside their own department. Okay, we're talking about organization wide is the influence here. All right, and we're encouraging everybody to coach. The higher up a person goes in an organization, right, the more value they're expected to produce for the organization. Right, and the value of a leader, really, it used to be determined by performance, and in many cases it really still is. Okay, but what's becoming more and more important, okay, is the ability to develop capability. You can notice the theme, I guess, that's through this webinar. All right, the best leaders are those that can develop capability at multiple levels across the organization. Right, and so the more someone coaches, the more value, or the more someone coaches, the more capability they develop, right? And therefore, the more value they generate for the organization. Jack Welch, one of the greatest corporate executives of the 20th century, he's got this famous quote that says, "In the future, leaders who cannot coach will not be promoted." Okay. So, in reality, the higher up you go in an organization, the more valuable coaching skills will become to you. But the more you coach, all right, and the more value you create using coaching skills, the higher up in the organization you're going to go, right? Is everybody still with me? All right, give me an emoji in the chat. All right, okay. Remember at the start of the webinar, I said I was going to do 3 things. I was going to show people where they could go to get help. All right, I said I had a very special surprise for you, and I also had a resource to give you. Now is that time. Can I do those 3 things? All right, again, give me a thumbs up in the. Oh, Kirk Thomas, I love your whale. Brilliant. All right. That is awesome. All right, cool. So I've got 2 ways that you can get help in this space if you are keen. All right. The first way is our coaching leader program. All right. It's creating coaching leaders throughout your organization or amongst your team. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time telling you about the program, but I will say, it is a fairly extensive program. There's so much value packed into it. We take you through 4 stages, right? The first is to establish, all right, a foundation for coaching within your team or within your organization. And that's introducing what coaching is, teaching leaders some coaching skills. And then we start to give leaders the experience of being coached and the experience of using coaching skills. Okay, so that's really important. It's much easier to coach someone if you have been coached yourself. All right, so there's individual coaching, plus there's a whole lot of stuff in there to help leaders actually coach their people. And then we start to evolve that capability. All right, continue some more training, some more activities. And then we look at how do we embed coaching in the culture of your team and your organization beyond, okay, the program. And that's really important. We want you guys to be able to sustain that yourself. My whole philosophy as a coach really is to make myself redundant, which is a crap business model, but hopefully it provides a super amount of value to you. Okay, so hey, if you think this would be helpful for you and you are interested in finding out more information about the Coaching Leader program, what I want you to do is put program please in the chat. and either I or my team will reach out and can contact you, and we'll have a discussion around, whether or not the program is right for you. Okay. The second way that you can find help is there is individual coaching available, right? For either you or members of your team or your organization. These are reduced prices. It's a special offer for you guys who are on the webinar today. You can see we've got the standard program. It's over about 6 months. Okay, you get coaching, you get personality assessments, and then we've got the premium program as well, which is 12 months. You've got personality assessment, plus you've got a leadership 360 bundled in there as well. And in both programs, you've got a copy of the Coaching Leader book. Okay. And so if you're interested in individual coaching and whether or not that might be something that might be helpful for you, what I get you to do, put is coaching please in the chat. Again, either I or my team will reach out to you in the next well, if it's not this afternoon, it'll probably be next week, given that we've got the weekend right around the corner. So if you're interested in individual coaching, chat coaching, please in the chat. Right, you'll see there a copy of the Coaching Leader book. Right, is in both of those packages. Here now is time for the surprise. Okay. Nobody out in a public forum has seen this. There's only a very few number of people that have seen this. Okay, but here is the cover of my new book that is coming out, The Coaching Leader. All right, essential skills to enhance your leadership and develop your people every day. All right, and that is coming out towards the end of the year. All right, and so if you are interested in that book, right, specifically, pre-orders are going to be available in about the next week or so. So if you're interested in that book, you want us to directly contact you with the details for pre-ordering, what I'll get you to do is put book please in the chat. Okay, again, my team will reach out to you with the details for the pre-ordering once that becomes available. Okay, and finally now the beginner's guide to coaching conversations. All right, here's a free resource for you. We've been talking about coaching conversations and using coaching skills, and what I want to give you is a free resource. It's a 6-page document that just outlines some basics around coaching, and you don't need any specific training. You don't need a coach to be able to enable you to start using coaching skills. And I encourage you to do that. All right. So if you're interested in that particular resource, what I'll get you to do is put resource please in the chat. Okay. And again, my team and I will get that resource to you probably within the next 24 hours, if not on Monday. Okay. All right, here is my favorite part of the session, and that's Q&A. All right, I love answering people's questions and being put on the spot. So if you had any questions about anything that we've covered today, then please, what I'll get you to do is throw them in the chat now, and I will answer those right now. Okay. One of the questions that I often get asked, right, is around the investment for coaching in terms of time. Okay, and so hey, asking all these questions just adds to the time that leaders gives them another thing to do, right? If we tell people what to do, it's quick, all right, it's easy. Whereas if we coach someone, that may add another half an hour onto the conversation. And sometimes that is the case. It is the reality. But the question that I would ask you, right, is what can you do now today that's going to give you more time in 6 weeks? If you're continually telling people what they need to do, then again, as we discussed during the webinar, you're making them reliant on people. on you, all right? And therefore, it's sucking up your time into the future. Whereas if you coach someone, you develop their own capability now, it may take an investment in the short term, okay? But it is actually winning the battle in the long term, okay? And so, you know, it's a short-term sacrifice for the long-term gain is very much a kind of perspective around coaching. Okay, Chad Walker, a quick tip for team members resistant to initial coaching, such as taking over staff example. Okay, what do you do when they don't engage? All right, cool. So great question. All right. So I've had this a couple of times. There's a couple of people on this call that know my experience with some of this. The first part is to listen to them, right? Listening makes people feel valued. Or quite often, people who are resistant, they are resistant because people have not valued their input or not valued their contribution in the past, and so therefore they kind of become resistant. They kind of stand up for their own thoughts and opinions and all that sort of stuff. So listening is really important, making them feel valued, making them feel worthy of being listened to. Okay, and so that kind of lays the foundation. The next one is what I would say is your request. The underlying principle of influence, right, is frame your request as a contribution to their priorities. So understand what's important to them, right, and then frame the request around engaging in coaching as a contribution to what's important to them. Okay, so let's say your career progression is a really important priority to them as an individual. Then, you know, talk to them about how engaging in coaching is going to contribute to their career progression. I know we've got a couple of people on the line here that are really client-centric or customer-centric companies and organizations. And therefore, the people that are attracted to organizations like that are really customer-oriented. So talk about how coaching, all right, contributes to the customer experience. That's what's important to them. And so if they can see how what you're asking them to do, how engaging in coaching contributes to their priority, then they're going to be more willing to actually engage in the coaching. So I hope that kind of gives you a starting point there, Chad. All right. Just loving some of these comments coming through. Okay, David, the last thing you want is an organization dependent on a leader. Okay, and you know, offering a different perspective there, Glenn. Every organization is dependent on a leader, and what I would say is that both are true. Okay, you don't want an organization that is so dependent on a leader in terms of being reliant on a leader, such that that leader can't, if you take that leader out of the picture for whatever reason, the whole organization implodes, right? That leader should be able to walk away from the organization, whether it's on a holiday or, you know, change roles or whatever the circumstances are. If you take the leader out of the picture, that organization and that team should be able to function effectively, okay, until a new leader comes in to take the helm. At the same time, right, ultimately that the capability to operate independently and effectively from the leader is dependent on the culture that the leader and the leadership that the leader uses. And so in that way, you know, Glenn, 100% agree with you as well. Daryl, can you coach someone that doesn't want to be coached? All right. You know, it's a question that often always comes up. And what I would say is that everybody is coachable unless they don't want to be coached. Okay. Coachability is all around a desire to engage. Okay. And so really, I think, you know, my answer would come back to what, you know, Chad's answer there a little bit. It's listen to them. It's talk to them about why they may not want to be coached. and really frame the coaching around how it contributes to them. At the end of the day, if they don't want to engage, well, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Okay. And, there've been individuals where that is the case. All right. And, it kind of gets quite frustrating when someone says, yes, I want to engage, but then they're not willing to actually properly engage and actually do the hard work to make the changes required that's necessary. All right. So guys, look, that is time. We are 2 minutes away from 1 o'clock. I don't want to run over. I don't want to take your time. I will be staying on here for the next 5 minutes or so. If anyone has any final comments or questions that they'd like to ask, but that is the session for today. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I hope it was valuable for you, and I look forward to catching up with each one of you in the future.